Joining us now is Pete Sepp, president of the National Taxpayers Union. Mr. Sepp, thank you very much for being here. Now, Trump, of course, pushing forward on these tariffs. First off, can you give us a sense of where the biggest trade imbalances are right now? I mean, for example, I think the European Union charges a 10%, or excuse me, maybe slightly lower tariff or so on American cars that come over to the EU. But where are those imbalances as you see them?
Well, first of all, these tariffs are really just taxes on American consumers, especially when you consider that in the past, whenever tariffs have gone up and the U.S. levies them on other countries, U.S. consumers face the burden, U.S. workers face the burden when they need the raw materials. And the areas that the president seems to want to target don't necessarily match where the tariffs are lowest or highest. There doesn't seem to be as much rhyme or reason. He seems to be aiming some of them at China, even Japan and South Korea. Well, Japan and South Korea are allies of the United States. Presumably, we want their cooperation on a number of security issues to help rein in Chinese aggression. So not sure what's going on there. And of course, recently there were threats for tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Well, the president negotiated agreements with Canada and Mexico in his first term that really helped to unlock trade among those countries. As far as Europe is concerned, well, we actually have a trade surplus with the UK, if you count the UK as being part of the European region. So again, it doesn't seem to make sense that you would want reciprocal tariffs on many of these countries. And the very term reciprocal tariff, while it sounds fair, actually creates a lot of unfairness, a lot of bureaucracy.
And congressional Democrats, I mean, you're saying things that sound quite similar to them. They call tariffs an effective tax on the middle class. So are they a tax on middle-class Americans?
Well, they are, but of course, Democrats have very little room to accuse the president on it because their own standard bearer, Joe Biden, levied huge tariffs that also damaged American consumers. This is a problem of terminology here. For one, when we talk about tariffs, again, we're talking about taxes on imports that get passed along to us. When we're talking about preserving American jobs, we're also talking about destroying them. For example, the first term Trump steel and aluminum tariffs aimed to preserve about 1,000 jobs in the American steel and aluminum industry. Well, our industries outside of steel and aluminum depend upon cheaper raw materials in order to manufacture goods. They lost about 75,000 jobs in those companies. So killing 75,000 American jobs to preserve 1,000 American jobs isn't really a fair equation at all. It's far from reciprocal.
So that actually leads perfectly into my next question. So you believe tariffs will effectively put more Americans out of work than those who could maybe gain a job because all of a sudden it makes more economic sense to produce something here rather than import it from abroad?
Yes, absolutely. That's been the history of job-saving tariffs throughout American policymaking. They want to save a handful of jobs and end up displacing others to a far greater degree. And it seems strange, too, as the administration is trying to study how to put these reciprocal tariffs on supposed foreign imports when it's really on American consumers. There's something on the order of 2.6 million tariff rates spread across 200 trade agreements and thousands of goods. How are we going to administer such a huge bureaucracy of reciprocal tariffs? I mean, that's a task that even DOJ would have a hard time figuring out.
Well, we know that Trump has proposed the External Revenue Service, some sort of companion to the Internal Revenue Service, to impose these tariffs. Again, questions about whether that will form and what that could look like if constituted as an independent agency. But again, Trump has time and time again threatened tariffs to try and extract certain promises from world leaders using tariffs as kind of a geopolitical 3D chess, negotiating about politics. Do you think that these current reciprocal tariffs are an actual threat? Do you think they could be imposed tomorrow? Or are we looking at more of a, we can talk to the EU about lowering tariffs here in exchange for this or that? I mean, is this 3D chess, or is this Trump actually hoping to put American production first?
Well, the Trump administration has given itself kind of some breathing room here by saying we're going to figure out how we institute this system because a report will need to be made, and that's due April 1st. Well, here's hoping they actually do take that time and discover that there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies that can't be easily addressed here. I mean, what about the situations where U.S. tariffs are incredibly high, and we're basically encouraging Europe and others to enact higher reciprocal tariffs of their own, like U.S. sugar and U.S. footwear? I mean, all of these things that we are levying high tariffs on already, but the tariffs are actually lower abroad. Other countries are going to raise them in response and hurt our own industries and workers. That seems to be the opposite of what we want to achieve as reciprocal. We really need to be taking a look at some of the bad laws that we're inflicting on ourselves already. Protectionist laws like the Jones Act that require U.S. flagged and U.S. crewed and U.S. built vessels to carry goods amongst our ports. President Trump exercised leadership in his first term by suspending that dumb protectionist law to help Puerto Rico recover from a hurricane. He could exercise that great leadership, zero tariffs, zero subsidies, zero barriers, by doing things like suspending and calling on Congress to repeal the Jones Act. That would be smart for American consumers and American leadership in trade.
A lot to think about there. Pete Sepp from the National Taxpayers Union. Pete, thank you for joining us here on Scripps News today.
My pleasure.